Our guest, Judge Michael Barrasse. Our topic, Veterans Court in Lackawanna County. You know, we are really fortunate to be on the cutting edge in this very important topic. As I understand it, there's only one other court in Pennsylvania that's designated as a Veterans Court.
As of today, I believe that's true. There are a number of others that are up and looking at it. It actually started not too far from here, our neighboring state, New York, Buffalo, New York. Judge Russell started the first one a little bit over a year ago. And they presently have 18 graduates of that program. And Judge Russell's been a huge help to us here, and looking to see what modifications we can make to our treatment court to really work with veterans to go through some of these really serious matters.
You know, we talked before the break. The first victim besides the veteran of traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress disorder, or both, is the spouse and children.
And without a doubt, the families are affected in so many different ways. It's one thing just for drug and alcohol or mental health, but one, when you're talking about a brain injury or a post-traumatic, the family just trying to figure out, number one, what is it? Is it real? Second of all, how is it going to be treated? But more importantly, their daily lives are affected, whether it be a loss of a job, whether it be a criminal record, whether it be using medications and booze to cover up the problems. The families feel the effect of all of it, and that really has to be addressed both separately in counseling and together in counseling so that they can identify the issues and work through them.
Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about how the Veterans Court works?
Well, essentially a veteran who commits a crime, and there's a big issue as to how serious a crime are you going to take. The way we're looking at it right now is we're taking just about all crimes that are not what we call a serious violent crime. No, obviously someone that commits a rape or something like that, incapacitation, jail is the necessary place for them. But individuals that are out, whether it be drinking, whether it be a bar fight, whether it be scripts which they are prescribing for themselves or stealing, those individuals, they plead guilty to the crime. They come into the court. We see them on a weekly basis. They're drug and alcohol tested every single day randomly. They also have to report for both mental health and drug and alcohol counseling. So essentially what you're doing is you're saying to the veteran, we recognize that you're a veteran, and we are going to work with you because you deserve that. But we're also going to hold you accountable, that you can't just go out and commit crimes of violence, or you can't commit crimes and not be held accountable for it. But we're also making sure that their needs are being addressed. So if they have post-traumatic stress disorder, are they getting the counseling that they need? Are they getting the medication that they need? Are they attending every week what they're supposed to do? Is the family getting counseling? Do we need to help them in regard to employment or education? What about their transportation? What about their housing? There's a number of other issues that we have to work with them on. So besides reporting to the court every week and being tested every week, as they move along in the program, each phase they have reduced requirements to show up in front of the court and probation. They have increased responsibility in regard to both their recovery and their own treatment. And that's where we really want to make sure the rubber's meeting the road.
How about family issues?
Well, very important in regard to family issues. As a matter of fact, this evening, well, every Tuesday night down at St. Mary's, Clearbrook holds a program from 6 until 8 o'clock, where the first hour is a lecture, the next one is group meetings, where the family gets to see that they're not alone in this, and the person that's the offender also gets to see how they are injuring the family. So it's basically helping both. And then obviously they need individual counseling sessions for both the family and the person.
You know, I was very much touched by your statement to the veterans at the first court session that you had. And I know from past experiences with you in the drug court that their honesty with you is something that is so important to the system, but more importantly to you.
It's the number one issue. If they're being honest with us, and then even if somebody uses, even if someone fails to make an appointment, and they come in and they're honest and they don't have, and they're not making excuses, but they're owning up for what they have done or failed to do, then we look to say we are going to work with you. If a person is coming in and they're blaming the family members and blaming everyone else for what they've done wrong, then we know that the person isn't really ready for step one of a program.
How about PFAs, Judge? Is that involved with the veterans at all? Have you been able to do anything in that regard?
It's an area which in some jurisdictions have been brought in. It's one that we will be expanding to in the future to say just because a person commits a criminal act, there's also often a companion civil matter of PFA against the individual. That needs to be addressed, needs to be brought in. One judge needs to be addressing both issues rather than having separate hearings on it. And maybe one judge over here gives him one set of requirements and I give him a different set of requirements. You overload the person often, or the requirements may actually clash as to what each judge is telling the individual to do. So it's definitely on the table right now to see how that can be effectively done. At the same time, we have to make sure that the spouses or the partner is being protected in regard to any rights that they may have.
You know, we hoped to have Judge Tommy Munley, who was a Vietnam veteran and very active in the veterans community as a lawyer here, but he's trying a criminal case today, and the jury he's waiting for the jury to get back. We're filming this during the week, of course, but Judge Munley is a great supporter of yours in this Veterans Court. I noticed that he brought in a lot of the veterans groups that he's been active with.
He has been very helpful, and one of the important things that Judge Munley is able to do is reach out to other veterans, because what we're hoping, if we're going to make this a successful program, we need to have veterans as mentors. Veterans that are, whether they have businesses or whether they're in recovery or whether or not they're just on a good path, that they can provide other veterans with saying, listen, I was in your position and I know how difficult it was when I got home. Here's what I did, or here's what I failed to do, and here's the mistakes that I learned from. So Judge Munley's been very helpful in bringing in some of the veterans, working with the VFWs and the American Legions to say, we want to work with you, veterans. We're not looking, we want to make sure that the individuals just aren't hanging out in the bar, but that they're in fact looking to see what they can do to progress with their life. And we want these organizations to help those veterans that have gotten themselves in trouble to say, we're there to help you move forward. You know,
on the civil side, we do a lot of work in our office with people with both post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, and we've worked closely with a couple of the neuropsychologists locally that are terrific. Mike Raymond down at Geisinger, and Abby Barr in Kingston, but also Dr. Matt Berger, who's been active with the Veterans Administration. And if we think in the legal community there's a problem, the psychiatric and those doing the psychological testing on these veterans are overwhelmed, because the Veterans Administration just isn't equipped to cover all of the returning veterans.
And I think right now you see there has been a number of hearings. As a matter of fact, last month before the Congress, there was a number of hearings in regard to both Veterans Court and what has to be done, increased funding to provide for evaluations and treatment for these individuals, especially as we start to see the return come back from Iraq and hopefully in the future Afghanistan. Those numbers of returnees need better psychological care and mental health treatment, obviously.
I don't think anyone should be sent to a combat zone without a neuropsychological evaluation before they go, so that a baseline is established, so when they come back, the changes can be evaluated. And I think that is absolutely critical.
And you know, the developments right now in regard to whether it be PET scans or everything else that can be done, as we didn't have this years ago. That's in regard to the studies that are out there and that can show both the injuries and the developmental patterns in the brain. And it's right now could be utilized. It's definitive, where before it was basically looked as being a subjective field. Now it's looked at as being a very objective field in which they can measure and they can pinpoint what the problems are.
You know, we only have to walk through the streets of a large city in the wintertime and see those folks huddled on the steam grates to realize how we have failed the Vietnam era and the Korean era veterans, and hopefully there won't be a repeat of it for this generation. Judge, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Veterans Court and maybe what people can do to get involved in helping veterans as they come back. So please stay tuned to You Be the Judge.